Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Angel of the Words podcast, where your stories are heard. I am your host, Angel of the Words. And before we get started, don't forget to click on that notification bell on YouTube. Subscribe, follow, like, comment, share these messages for us if you can. It's important. We're also available on Spotify, which has video now. So don't forget, if you're a Spotify subscriber, follow us on Spotify and all podcast platforms. Our sponsors today are OTW Threads, Out of This World Threads, reminding you to be out of this world, and AttitudeOn10.com, your place to get over your trauma and build resilience. If you want to start your own podcast and you want some gear, click on the affiliate links down below and get yourself started on your own podcast. Our exclusive merchandise, like this cup right here, and our blogs are at AOWENT.com. Now on deck on the Angel of Words podcast, we have poet and HIV activist Rob Vassilarakis. Hello, Rob Vassilarakis. Thank you for joining us here on the Angel of Words podcast. It's a pleasure to have you, my brother.
It's a pleasure to be had.
Oh, man, that's awesome. It's so crazy how I met you through a very dear, friend of mine that I've had for over 20 years, Vincent Dabu. Shout out to Vincent, for supporting the Angel of Words movement and for putting me on to amazing people. So definitely got to give him his love. And and then you were also, you've been part of the NUYORICAN Poets Cafe, and I interviewed La Bruja. So that's crazy how this is all coming about. So thank you again for coming on, sir.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me to come on.
Now, Rob, man, I want to get right into it because this is a layered situation, right? Because I was listening to the media for the last 3 months, and when this monkeypox situation started coming out, and they started not blaming, but they started saying that only gay men get this virus. I'm like, yo, bro, like, we doing this again? Like, we're doing this again? Seriously? A virus, I'm pretty good at science, and I know that a virus has no bias. They're not like human beings. You know what I mean? They attack whoever is in its nearest vicinity. So, I would like you to give some clarity to the people out there on the monkeypox situation, anything that you would know specifically to let people, know what's going on and to clear their heads a little bit on this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on that. So, I think that the narrative in terms of the media has been a bit irresponsible. So what we do know is that monkeypox is a virus that can be contracted through prolonged skin-to-skin contact. And so what they're saying is that, it's very prevalent in sort of intimate skin-to-skin contact. So, and that you have to come in contact with sores of someone who has the outbreak, or that, so if you lay on in bedding of someone that has the sores, or if you wear their clothes, someone, that has the lesions. So it's really prolonged skin-to-skin contact, or if you come in contact with the secretions, anyone can get it. It is not an LGBT specific virus. It just so happens that seems to be where the concentration is right now. But there are actually reports of cisgender women. And for anyone who doesn't know what cisgender means, it's just anyone who doesn't identify as transgender. So I don't identify as transgender, so I'm a cisgender man, right? Children, there's been some cases of children that have gotten it. So it's not specific to men that have sex with men or the transgender community. And so I think that because they keep pushing the narrative of like men that have sex with men that have sex with men, that it's misleading, and that also it's perceptions, right? People hear what they want to hear, right? It's like a game of telephone. So, they hear men that have sex with men and they're like, oh, okay, that's not affecting me, but anyone can get it. So that's the thing. So, in terms of, I know for myself, I would just use myself as the example in terms of prevention. So I'm single, and I've just chosen at this time to put sex on the shelf. I'm not really engaging in casual sex. So that's the first thing. And then in terms of like skin to skin contact or potential skin to skin contact, for me, there's sort of a lack of clarity in the messaging, right? So what is prolonged skin to skin contact outside of an intimate skin to skin situation, right?
Yep.
Is it a 10-second hug? Is it a 30-second hug? And I will tell you, as someone who's very affectionate, I'm a hugger. Like if I hug you, it's not going to be one of these, it's like, I'm going to hug you. Like I'm what's up, man? Like, it's good to see you.
Oh man, you give those good hugs, man. Those
yeah,
great,
I'm a squeezer.
Man.
I'm a squeezer. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
I appreciate that. I'm a hugger too,
Yeah, man. So, especially if I haven't seen you in a while, like I'm definitely going to grab you and I'm going to hold on to you. Like, not on some aggressive stuff, but like, I'm gonna show love. Like, that's to me, it's important. So I say that to say that I think even more so than putting sex on the shelf and not really like being sexually active right now, it's going on 2 months. And so, I don't know if that's a long time for some people, but for me, I'm active, I'm young, I'm viable,
I did like 3 years, bro. So
okay. Right. I mean, I feel your pain.
Some of it, you know what I'm saying? Some of it was, not because I wanted it to. It just ended up being that way. But, I did make a conscious effort to get focused and get disciplined on the Angel of Words podcast when I first begun it. So, that wasn't even crossing my mind. And it just, just one of those happenstances.
Got it. I mean, so there you go. It's like in terms of like sexual, like how people move sexually, like it really is, it really is a personal choice. Like I said, I'm single, I'm young, I'm viable. Like, it's not like I'm constantly seeking it out, but if it happens, then, there's a vibe. Sure. I'm open to it.
And, that's the thing, people are getting scared, like, to live their normal lives because of this media situation with, basically lying about the monkeypox situation, just being, catered to the LGBT community. And I don't like that, and I really appreciate you giving the correct and accurate information. You got to be careful regardless of who you're sleeping with. Bottom line, that's just what it is, and it was sad to hear that because, I remember the beginning, when AIDS was prevalent and, those stereotypes were of the LGBTQ, communities were being leaked out there, man. It was a terrible situation, man. It causes fear, it causes hatred, it causes polarization, and I'm not a fan of that. So I really appreciate you coming on here and letting them know about that. But you also are an activist. Before we
move on, though, there's one piece that I do want to. So I have made a personal choice to put sex on the shelf.
Yeah.
And not to hug people, right? And so it's really important that you mention like the fear.
Yeah.
The fear piece, right? So as long as we have the information, as long as you educate yourself, then you are armed with the knowledge to be able to make choices that are right for you. Right. And so with that said, like in no way, shape or form am I shaming people that have chosen to remain sexually active. Everyone, people are adults as long as it isn't some sort of like sexual assault type situation. If two consenting adults, go into a situation, hopefully have communication, and an awareness that monkeypox, MPV is what some people are calling it as well. Is around, just like, we know that there's other stuff that can be, transmitted during sex. So as long as hopefully we're having those conversations, two consenting adults go into a situation, like I'm not shaming anyone who is choosing to have sex or who's choosing to hug, like multiple people, like, that's each person has to make choices that's right for them. So I just wanted to be clear on that piece. Like, I'm not
for
like,
sure. No, and thank you for elaborating on that and being clear on that. I really appreciate that. And I want to move on to another disease which you fight for and you're an activist for, the HIV virus. And I want to talk about your work with the gay men's health crisis. Could you discuss that a little bit for us and tell us what that is, for the people that are listening that don't even know what that is?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we're referred to more as GMHC now.
Okay.
GMHC does stand for Gay Men's Health Crisis. So GMHC was the first ever organization that was created in response to the HIV/AIDS crisis back in the 80s. Thank you for bringing that up. We're actually in our 40th year. Right. Wow. So we just celebrated 40 years and we just had a Founders Day celebration at the AIDS Memorial, which is down on 12th Street and 7th Avenue, right across the street from where the St. Vincent's Hospital used to be.
Oh, man. Yeah.
St. Vincent's Hospital closed sometime after 9/11, but it was pretty much like the epicenter, right? Where a lot of folks went and passed. So it's fitting that the memorial would be right there between both structures that used to be St. Vincent's. So GMHC, there is a correlation in sort of the way that things have rolled out with HIV/AIDS and the response, right, with monkeypox. Because there's like this traumatic association. It feels very similar to how people just don't, they didn't care. The governmental response, the government response to monkeypox, something that seemed like that the media was perpetuating, that it's like, a disease for men that have sex with men. And so there was this like sort of slow rollout, this slow response, which makes no sense, especially in, I don't want to say post-COVID, but like, after the COVID response, you would think, right, after everything that we've been through the last 2-3 years, that the government would be more apt to respond to another health crisis, right? And so it's just, it's a bit disheartening. So GMHC was started by members of the community who were, who were watching all of their friends and loved ones just drop, and so the 6 founders got together, in someone's living room, and they, would discuss basically like, what can we do? And basically the organization started as a hotline, which was basically a phone attached to an answering machine to try and answer questions for people who were concerned or who were scared or who were, going through stuff. So my understanding is that through word of mouth, like that the first night that they went up, they had over 100 calls. Right. Wow. And so each question led to a quest to find out more information to be able to answer those questions. And then, as time moved on, the agency expanded and grew. We're known as GMHC now because even though the epicenter of the HIV/AIDS crisis started in, the gay community, like other diseases, it affects anyone. Like HIV does not discriminate. And so we are not, gay men's health crisis. It's not just the gay man's, service center. We service anyone and everyone. And we have an array of different services, starting with HIV and STI testing, linkage to PrEP and PEP. We also have the workforce department, which, anyone who, for people who need some job readiness skills and resume building and also some job placement, like housing services, mental health and substance use services, like a whole array of different services, food and nutrition, counseling. And also, we provide a very robust pantry every Wednesday. We're collaborating with some farmers markets. So, that pantry that people pick up is actually also loaded with these beautiful, robust, like fruits and vegetables. And eggs, right? Like eggs are like $5-6 a carton right now. And I'm not even talking about the organic stuff. So people come in like just on the strength of the eggs alone. Like it's crazy. But so we're doing some good stuff. We continue to rep, we continue to serve. And then also GMHC has really taken a lead in terms of New York and beyond in the monkeypox MPV conversation. So for me personally, as someone who came up knowing about GMHC, and I think my first awareness of GMHC, I was probably 18 or 19. Prior to testing positive myself. And, I remember walking in my first AIDS walk. And by that point, I already knew some people that had passed away. And I also knew some people that had HIV or, were sick with AIDS. And, at that point, we're talking about like 1989, 1990, 1991, the expectation was that they were going to die.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I tested positive myself in 1993. So I say all that to say that for me it's been I've been with the agency for 6 years and change. Last March I made 6 years, primarily in the HIV testing center. Initially I came in as a coordinator for one of the contracts. It was called the social networking strategy. And basically the whole premise of that contract was to flush out social networks. So if you had one individual that, was in sort of a high risk population, you would enroll them as oh my God, what was the term for them? Anyway, they were like they were like the point person that I would engage, and then we would flush out through that person's social network, because people tend to, like people in social networks, sometimes they connect and they drink, they party, and they have sex, and like sometimes, one person might sleep with somebody in that group. And so the idea was to flush out through testing that social network. And then we would,
basically to stop the spread, within the social network.
Yeah, within those social networks, right?
Okay, that's great, man. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, so that was my first role. And then after that, I stepped up as on-site supervisor. And then at some point I became off-site supervisor. And so, because we have off-site testing, stuff as well that we do. So yeah, it's been a great ride. And now currently I was promoted last March on my 6th year, to the director of partnership generation. So like really my role, my task is to, try and strengthen existing relationships, especially in this, COVID world, like because so much of the landscape has changed and, so much of the in-person stuff has gone virtual. And so really just to sort of comb through the community, find out what people are doing, how they're serving their clients right now. How can we bridge the gaps? How can we partner? How can GMHC and, your organization come together and really bridge the gap in services? What can we do for you? What can you do for us in an effort to really serve our clients holistically, right? So that's what we're doing right now. And that's what my role is to strengthen those relationships and find new ones. We've been around for 40 years, so I'm sure that somewhere along the line, there are some burnt bridges. So it is my hope that if there's any, any relationships that were compromised somewhere along the line in the last 40 years, that I can come in and that we can break bread and that we can bury the hatchet and
change the energy, put it on a high vibration. I feel you. Yeah.
So that's where we're at right now. That's where I'm at, and that's where we're at.
Fantastic organization, man. I'm glad about the work you're doing, man. Thank you so much. It's a great thing for not only the city, but the world. You know, so thank you so much for the hard work that you put in to help people, man, that need it, you know. And I actually want to talk about, you know, the new drug situations with the PrEP and the PEP and the Big Tarvy, things of that nature. What are your thoughts on these pills? And, you know, you know, like I have a family member who thinks that, like, you know, these pills, not everybody's going around willy-nilly, not being responsible. So how has that changed the landscape of the community?
I mean, if how do you define responsible, right? Like, so if, you know, if somebody is taking PrEP as prescribed, you could say they're being responsible because there's no way that they're going to get HIV and there's no way that they're going to transmit the virus.
Exactly.
Now, you know, what do you mean by, you know, they're not being responsible? Does that mean that they have multiple sexual partners and so they're not being responsible that way? Does that mean that, you know, they're not having sex with condoms? You know, like I said earlier, like consenting adults, you know, that consent to engage in certain behaviors or, you know, certain sexual practices. You know, I would hope that the conversations are happening, right? But
yeah, for sure, me too.
You know, I would hope that the conversations are happening. So I think that, you know, in terms of like, there's still so much shame around the sex conversation, you know. You know, I mean, the truth is that most people and who is it that's pointing the finger, right? Like when you point the finger, there's an old saying, right? Like when you point the finger, there's three pointing back at you.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know,
I like that. I never heard that before. I'm gonna be honest. I like that.
Are you really projecting, right?
Yeah,
like, are you
exactly.
like, you know, who are you making the choice to be responsible? And if so, for you, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and who are you judging? So this is what we know. So I'll focus on like the facts and what we know, right? So I'm going to start with U equals U. So as an HIV positive person, as I mentioned, I was diagnosed in 1993. I take a 1 pill a day regimen, right? That 1 pill a day suppresses my virus, right? Therefore, I'm undetectable. It doesn't mean that that I've been cured. It just means that the virus has been suppressed. That the way that the medications work is that the virus is forced to be suppressed, and then it's not sort of freely floating around in the fluids where HIV can be found. Therefore, it is impossible for me to transmit the virus. So when I take my daily reminder, is what I like to call it. I take it with my breakfast every morning. When I take my daily reminder, not only am I ensuring that I stay healthy, that I don't get sick, that my HIV does not progress to AIDS, but I'm also ensuring that I cannot transmit the virus to someone else, right? So that's treatment. U equals U. U equals U means undetectable equals untransmittable. You with me?
Got you. Yeah, I'm following for sure. This is important stuff, man. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Of course. Then you got PrEP and you got PEP, right? So PrEP is you have either Truvada, which is the original form of it, or the newer form, which is Descovy, right? So both of those medications are not enough to treat HIV. So my 1 pill a day has 4 medications. I'm going to go back to the treatment piece, and I'm going to try and break this down as layman's terms, right? So the pill that I take has 4 medications in it. Each one of those medications will block the HIV at different stages of its replication cycle, and that's what causes it to be suppressed. So the virus is, I'm going to be a little disgusting right now, but if you think of HIV as a roach infestation, right?
Okay.
You know, some people I know that when I move into a new apartment, I want to make sure that the place is going to be roach free. So I set up my combat and I pull out my Raid and I put my boric acid in the corners and I'll call the exterminator and I'm going to put the glue traps, right? I want to make sure that within that first week that if there's anything in there that it's not going to I'm going to control it. right? We live in New York City. Like, I don't care if you don't see a roach on the wall ever, like somewhere in this building, there are roaches, right? And so, but they're undetectable because I have put all of those, medications, all of those preventions in place.
Yeah.
Right now, if I stop doing that and I leave food out and I stop using the combat, right? Like, I still have combat and glue traps just in case. My apartment is, I don't see roaches ever, but I leave that stuff. And occasionally you'll see one, oh, that one, okay, we got it. You know what I'm saying? And so it remains undetectable. But if I stop doing that, if I stop taking those precautions, then there's the potential for that infestation to keep exploding. Does that make sense? That's how the medications work. So to understand the HIV life cycle, right? The HIV targets the T cell, right? So it looks for the T cell, it attaches itself to the T cell, it penetrates the T cell, and then it replicates inside. So there's like millions of copies. And so the T cell basically becomes an egg sac. And then when that egg bursts, then millions of copies of that HIV are then, free floating or swimming or whatever, however you want to describe it, through your bloodstream, looking for more T cells to replicate that cycle. So the HIV medications, each one will attack the HIV at different stages of its replication cycle. So it is found that what the Truvada or the Descovy does is that it creates this sort of medication force field around the T cell. Therefore, if that person who's taking PrEP, right, comes in contact with somebody and the condom breaks, or if it's a sexual assault situation, or, if they're just, I don't know, in a night of drunken debauchery, there's just no condom, they forego the condom, heat of the moment, that if the person that they're in contact with happens to have HIV and they become exposed, because the T cell is protected with the medication force field, that the HIV will not be able to attach itself or penetrate the T cell in order to be able to replicate. Therefore, it just dies off. And for lack of a better word, the infection just doesn't occur. Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right.
So that's PrEP. And then lastly, we have PEP, which is a variation, also not enough to treat HIV, but you can think of it as the morning after pill for HIV. So within 72 hours of a potential exposure, say you wake up the next morning from that drunken debauchery situation and you're like, oh my God. Or like 20 minutes after, like someone says to you, oh my, there's something I should have told you. And you're like, oh, fuck, but we didn't use a condom. Why? You're going to tell me now? Yeah. So, you get to a medical provider, an emergency room, or in New York City, there is a PrEP NYC PEP hotline, NYC PEP hotline. Like, you can Google that.
Okay, I'll flash it across the screen. I'll look it up and I'll flash it across the screen on the edit so people know where to reach out to for those hotlines. For sure.
Beautiful. So yeah, it's through that. So that PEP hotline is set up through the New York State Department of Health and I believe Mount Sinai. Okay. So that you can literally, even if it's Saturday at 2 a.m., if there's a situation, you can call that hotline. If someone doesn't pick up in the moment, you can leave a message and best believe that within 20 minutes to an hour, 45 minutes, someone will be calling you back. You explain the situation to a medical provider on the phone, and then they will assess you and they will tell you, the risk, whether it is a viable risk or not. And if so, then they will call in a prescription to a pharmacy near you where you can pick up the starter pack. So the starter pack would be like 2 or 3 days of medication. And then that way you can get to a provider at the next available appointment and they will fill the remaining 28 days. All right. Wow. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to live in New York City with these.
New York City's kid in the game, man. I'm glad, man. I'm glad because, I was a young kid when I saw the terror. I may have not been, old enough to really comprehend what was going on, but you could feel the tension.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that disease has taken people in my own family. So I really appreciate the information that you're giving us right now. Thank you so much.
The last thing I'm going to say about
go ahead.
pesto is that there is a window. Like you
Okay.
have to have that medication in your system within a 72-hour window, right? Obviously, the closer you are to the potential exposure, the more apt the medication is to work. Okay. So, you know, so it's more effective if you get that medication in you like within 2 hours versus waiting to the 72nd, you know?
Gotcha.
So
get it right away if you can, if it's possible, you know, and reach out on the hotline. I'm going to scroll that underneath here. And definitely, you know, if that happens, you know, just reach out to the hotline and get the medication as soon as possible is what you're telling the people to do.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. Right now, we're speaking of Vassilarakis, man, you know, awesome poet, you know, activist, you know, working for the GMHC, killing the game.
How do you know I'm an awesome poet? Have you heard my stuff?
No, bro. I mean, you know, Vincent, you know, if I'm not mistaken, I recall I was with Vincent one time. I think that we went to go see you. So if I'm not mistaken, that was a while back.
All right.
Yeah. Right. No, I used to hang out with Vinny a lot. He's the one that helped culture me. Like I was a young kid from the projects with no culture, and I would hang out with Vincent because he's a little bit older than me, and he took me under the wing, you know what I mean, like a mentor, and showed me the culture of downtown and Brooklyn and things of that nature. So I really owe him a lot, you know, of
Vincent's a good dude. You're gonna have to flash a picture of him as well.
Just for sure. We're gonna put up some B-roll of my man Vinny D. You already know, man. That's my guy. The podcast, everyone, is sponsored by OTW Threads, reminding you to be out of this world, and attitudeon10.com, your place to get over trauma and build resilience. Now, Rob, let's get into it, baby. The poetry, man. How did you know? What inspired you to get started, man? And you know,
this is actually quite the story.
All right, go ahead.
And I love this because it allows me to shout out and pay homage to someone that's very important in my life as a whole, but also in sort of my creative life, Caridad de la Luz, aka La Bruja, who I refer to as my poetry mother, right?
Nice.
So before I was a poet and a writer, I was an actor. Yeah. And you know, I'm 51, so I was coming up in the 80s, you know, and I really did have dreams of being like a household name. And being, you know, a star, right? A movie star, a stage and screen star. Nice. However, you know, as people loved to remind me all the time that I didn't quite have the all-American look, right? And so, and anytime that anytime that I went to auditions, it was always like the same stuff, like, you know, they always wanted to typecast me in very sort of negative roles. Okay. You know, and there was also a lot of rejection. There was a lot of rejection, and it was something that I really wasn't able to take. But there was a casting call at Latea in the Lower East Side, which is a cultural center, and it was in backstage. So I looked in backstage. I remember I was going to at HB Studios, which is a theater school, and I was being encouraged to, you know, I was doing a lot of scene work, and I studied under someone named Ed Morehouse, who to me changed the whole game for me and really allowed me and mentored me to work on my craft. And so I answered this casting call for a show called Sideshow, which was written by one of the NUYORICAN Poets Cafe founders, Miguel Piñero.
Okay.
And so I was cast in the lead, and the first day of rehearsals, the director pulled out aloud Voices from the NUYORICAN Poets Cafe. And she read, which is an anthology. And there are 2 Miguel Piñero poems in that book. The first one is the Book of Genesis according to Saint Miguelito. and the other one is the Lower East Side poem, where he talks about wanting his ashes scattered throughout the Lower East Side. Because my understanding is that he was an IV drug user. He was addicted to heroin and I guess other stuff. And he also had HIV. I believe he died of AIDS. So, so he knew that, and he wrote a piece about it. And it was the first time in my life that I had ever heard poetry, and that I was like, oh my God, I get it. Right. It wasn't this like Emily Dickinson and like, Charles
Edgar Allan Poe,
It just, I wasn't able to wrap my brain around that poetry when I was coming up, but this really spoke to me. So I ran out and I got that book. I actually still have it, as a matter of fact.
Right now, Rob went to go get the book. He's coming right back. There you go.
There it is. Aloud. Voices from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe.
Oh, man. All right. So people, you should purchase this book, man. Aloud. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And so I literally walked around. They're not here anymore, but I read through this book and I put paper clips in all of the poems that I liked. They were colored paper clips. And I literally walked around with this book as if it were my Bible. And any opportunity that I had to corner someone, I'd be like, yo, you gotta hear this. And I would start reading poetry like I was somehow I had, I turned my life to Christ and now I'm preaching the gospel. Like this became my gospel.
That's so awesome. I'm going to put the link for that book in the description, guys. So everyone that's listening, guys and gals and folks, anyone that's listening, we're going to put the link of that book in the description and hopefully it's still available.
So I don't know what link, you're going to find and put, but also you may want to support the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. I believe that you might be able to get these books through them.
Oh, okay.
So, I would also, and Caridad La Bruja is very involved in the Nuyorican Poets Cafe right now. My understanding is that she's currently the interim.
She's the executive director officially. Yeah. So speaking of her,
So try and support.
All right. So I'm gonna put
the
actual Nuyorican Poets Instagram on.
Yeah.
That way you reach out to them and hopefully you can gain access to the book.
She's doing some really amazing stuff with the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. I'm so proud of her. The direction that she's leading the Nuyorican Poets Cafe after COVID, and then also my brother, my poetry brother, the Advocate of Words, who is a founding member, as am I, of El Grito de Poetas. He's also up in there and he's very involved in that. And they're really I'm so proud of them. They are taking the Nuyorican Poets Cafe to new heights, and they are expanding their reach through the virtual platforms as well. I know that that Eric or Words is Advocate of Words. Like he does these poetry slams, and so they're virtual and they're like in multiple locations throughout the globe. So you might have like France and or England and somewhere down in South America, and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, like doing this virtual thing. It's insane what they're doing. So I know I'm getting the countries wrong, but they're really making moves, and I'm just so proud and thrilled for them, and for the cafe.
Nah, man, that's super cool.
So, boom, fast forward. In 2001, I was working for the Hispanic AIDS Forum, and I was the senior youth counselor. And basically what we did there, I was at the Bronx location, and we had this intervention where we were working with a collective of different Bronx high schools, and we had this after school program that paid a stipend. We would select 2 or 3 students from different Bronx high schools. We would train them in HIV prevention, with HIV prevention education. And then we would create a skit that we would then tour through the different high schools. Okay. And I'm not going to front. When I got there, it was a bit of a shit show. Because it was really sort of this unrealistic telenovela sort of depiction of like boy meets girl, boy gives girl HIV. Everybody freaks out and has a complete and total meltdown. And then, here comes the mother having the patatushi, and then she comes together as the matriarch and she's okay, don't worry, everything's gonna be okay. Let's go have some arroz y habichuelas. And I was like, no, this is not reality, right? And so right around the time that I was stepping into this role, my friend Felix Rodriguez was doing a documentary called La Bruja, A Witch from the Bronx. And he had asked me if I knew who she was. And I was like, no, I don't know her. And he was like, oh my God, I'm having this event, a fundraising event. You have to come. And so, I'm recalling the moment, right? Because first of all, if you don't know Caridad, she's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful, right? Here, this vision that walks through, and then she starts kicking her poetry, and I was absolutely mesmerized by her and her work. And then she plugged a show that she was doing, a one-woman show that is called Boogie Rican Boulevard. And the next day, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get in there, but all her shows were sold out. So I called Felix and I was like, listen, I don't know what you can do, but I want to get me and some of my kids in there. We have to, I fell in love with her last night. We have to get some of my kids in there. And so Gotti, this speaks to the type of person that she is. Gotti, Bruja, she called me. She didn't even fucking know me. I didn't even get to meet her that night. She was swamped with people. And I was so overcome by what I had just seen that I'm not going to front, I was totally fangirling. And I didn't have the nerve to go up to her and introduce myself. So she picked up the phone and called me and she was like, hey, Rob. She was like, so Felix called me and he told me that you do this work with these young people in the Bronx. And, she's a Bronx artist, born and raised. And she was like, so unfortunately, all my shows are sold out. She's like, but if you can fill my theater with Bronx students tonight at 5:00, I will do a command performance before my 8:00 performance for you.
Oh man, that's such a nice thing for her to do.
Bro, I was like, I got you. Let me call you right back. And I was calling all my contacts at all the different high schools. I was calling all my kids. I was like, yo, bring your cousin, bring your best friend, bring everybody. So, bro, we had that auditorium filled. And I was like, okay, I don't know y'all, but me and my kids are sitting in the front row. Yeah. I was right in the middle. All my kids were right here. And then there were a bunch of primos and all the students and the friends and even some faculty came and she blew us away. And at that point, because she's a multi why am I going blank on this
she's
word?
A multifaceted performing
faceted artist, right? Yeah. So there was some singing, there was some dancing, there was monologue, there was poetry. And I was like, this is it. This is what the skits have to become. And so instead of doing this freaking telenovela, drama of what can happen, we need to tap into each one of these kids. Each one of these kids is talented in their own way, shape, or form. So the following day, when it was time to meet, with the kids, I presented them with this. I was like, look, why don't we start by writing some poetry? Right. And, there's always one sassy motherfucker up in that motherfucker. Right. And so he was like, well, his name was Chris. Rob, you told us that you never asked us to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. So why don't you go write a poem?
Put you on the spot, right?
I got you. I'm going to come in with a poem tomorrow. And sure enough, I did.
That's so
cool. But then that sassy little motherfucker was like, you didn't write that. Really? And I was like, yes, I did. He's like, nah, you didn't write that. Who wrote that? Because you plagiarized it. But I had actually written it. And then what I found is that I actually had a gift, that I actually had some stuff to say.
That's a great story, Rob.
Yeah,
Thank you so
man.
much for
So
sharing
that
that with
was
us,
the
man.
evolution. That was sort of so that's, and then like Gotti and I became really tight after that. And, she mentored me in so many ways. Like I became the only groupie, like I followed her everywhere. And so, my ability to host an open mic comes from her. My ability to write and perform comes from her. Like she really gave me the gift of poetry. And that's why I deem her my poetry mother. And she's actually, I think she's younger than me, because I'm 51. So, but still, like in terms of like the gift of poetry, she was the one that birthed Simply Bob, right? That's what I'm known as in poetry circles. So,
well, shout out to Caridad de la Luz, La Bruja, a.k.a. La Bruja, man, former guest here on the Angel of Words podcast. I think it's episode 89, so if you want to check that out, my conversation out with her, she also performs on that as well. And Rob will be performing for us as well after 5 Words with Angel. And Rob, right now, we've reached the point of the podcast where it's time to play 5 Words with Angel. All right, Rob, now on 5 Words with Angel, I'm going to give you a word, phrase, or a question. You're going to give me the first word that comes to your head. Are you ready? All right, cool. Here we go. All right, so the first word is Dr. Fauci. What do you think about when you think about Dr. Fauci?
Politics.
All right, the next word is HIV.
Not a death sentence. Driving.
Cool. I like that. And the Dr. Fauci, yeah, I don't know how, he's supposed to be a scientist, you know what I mean? In the United States, all politics. It's crazy. The next word is media.
Oh my God. Don't believe everything you see in the news. Question everything.
Facts. You have to.
I need to say this about media, right? And so the media can take many forms, right?
Yes.
But question the narratives, because a really good documentary could have you vilifying the child and feeling sorry for the pedophile, right? Because it's all media, a really compelling story will look at Dexter, right? Like Dexter's a great show. Everybody loves and everybody roots for Dexter, but Dexter is a serial killer.
Me too. I felt sorry when his son shot him in the latest one, man. Oh, man, you blew that up. My bad. I hope you saw that already. I hope you saw that already. Hope I didn't give that away. The next word is the dentist. What do you think about the dentist?
Trauma. Traumatic recall.
I hear that.
Yeah, trauma and a bank and negative balances. That's
negative balances and trauma.
Yeah,
hopefully those days are far behind you. The next and the last and final word on 5 Words with Angel is the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. Life.
That's where life happens, and it's just it's just mind blowing. Supernova talent. Yeah, that's home.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, those are the words.
I love it. Now, Rob, could you, let me say this real quick. 5 Words with Angel was sponsored by OTW Threads, Out of This World Threads, reminding you to be out of this world, and AttitudeOn10.com, your place to get over your trauma and build resilience. Could you give us a little, some final thoughts here, man, for anyone dealing with the virus and for, something that you just feel people should know before we sign off?
I think the deadliest form of stigma is the internalized stigma. It never gets easier for me to deliver an HIV positive test result, because not so much, so much has changed and people are living longer, they're fitter, they're healthier, even with HIV. But it always pains me when I deliver an HIV positive test result, or in the pre and post test, the pre-test counseling session, and I ask, so, what would you do if your test came back positive? And I hear things like, suicidal ideation. When people tell me they want to jump off a building or in front of a train, and, it baffles me. Because there's so much life still after an HIV positive diagnosis. And I'm living proof of that. Like my life is, I'm living the life of my dreams. I'm 51 years old. Like, no shade.
You look great, man. You got to check out this guy's Instagram, man. He puts my young ass to shame, B. You make me want to go to the gym right after this.
You know what I'm saying?
Man, it's
but yeah, no. And it's really, health and happiness is a mindset. It's a lifestyle, and, yeah. And so it always pains me when, like, when people, that's where they go, mentally. But no, like, HIV is not the end of the world. It's preventable. But yeah, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but if you have it, like, there's still so much beautiful, healthy life to live. So, don't be reduced by an HIV status. That's what I would say.
Now, where can we find you, Rob?
So my Instagram is simply Rob, SIMPLYROB, Vassilarakis, VASSILARAKIS. My Facebook is just Rob Vassilarakis, and my TikTok is also simply Rob Vassilarakis.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Rob. Everyone, that was Rob Vassilarakis here on the Angel of Words podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Definitely follow us on Spotify. If you're a Spotify user, they take care of us. The website where you can get the blog and the exclusive merchandise like this cup is at AOWENT.com. If you want to start your own podcast and you don't know where to get the gear, I have the description links below. That'll take you right there. All the information that you heard here on the Angel of Words podcast will be scrolled. So, don't fret. It's going to be on there. And our thank you to our sponsors, OTW Threads and AttitudeOn10.com. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Talk to you later. Te quiero, Puerto Rico. Now, Rob, would you mind sharing a poem with us here on the Angel of Words podcast, sir?
The presence of antibodies is what they look for when they test for HIV. I was almost 22 years old in 1993, 10 years since the first cases had been reported about in NYC, now spread throughout its various communities, no longer them, because now it's we. That didn't stop me from testing the breaking point of invincibility. I stepped into the room that smelled of sterility, where I waited for what seemed like an eternity to see what the results of my test would read. Your test came back positive, he said, nothing less, nothing more. Unable to look me in the eye, he stared down at the floor. He'd never delivered an HIV positive test result before. My impulse to bolt out the door was outweighed by the need to make sure that the doctor felt secure. So I stayed, and I was counseled some more. 7 years to live were some words I grabbed onto. Treatment options and not a death sentence were some others. Had I been another, I might have jumped in front of the 2 train like my girl Sharonda's little brother, or hung myself in the bathroom like my boy Beetle's baby's mother, after they discovered that the baby had the monster too. But instead of suicidal ideation, I found that I had the will to live and that I actually possessed the power to forgive. Forgive myself for the choices I had made and the actions I had spoken. Forgive the one who infected me because he's dead, and I have a long life ahead. Forgive my mother for her ignorance and for her religious convictions, which allow her to believe in a God whose answers to drug addiction are AIDS and HIV. Forgive the doctor for his contradictions, for his inaccurate depictions, for pushing mad prescriptions, for his 7-year prediction, which caused me for some years to reside within my fear. It's been 29 years and I'm still here. It's been 29 years and I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. That's the piece. 7 years.
That was absolutely beautiful, touching, inspiring. I don't know. I'm running out of adjectives, but I'm sure there's a lot more to describe what you just put down here on the Angel of Words podcast. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you.